Why did we get a Despicable Me game for the PS2 in the grand year of 2010? I suppose just to save money. So yes, welcome to Despicable Me the game. This released in late 2010 for the PS2, PSP, the Nintendo Wii, and the Nintendo DS. Now what's very interesting here is that yes, I said 2010, and no, there was no release for the Xbox 360, nor the PlayStation 3. Now, you have to bear in mind that this was a good few years into that generation of consoles, so it seems very strange that there was no version developed for the PlayStation 3 nor the 360. And what's even weirder is that here in Europe, the game received a PEGI 12 age rating. Huh? The film itself is a universal, meaning anyone can watch. Why is the game 12 and up? What despicable things does Gru do in this game to bump its age rating up so much? Well, I guess we're gonna have to find out. So the PS2 and Wii versions of Despicable Me the game was developed by a company called Monkey Bar Games, who had previously worked on such iconic titles as Dora the Explorer, Journey to the Purple Planet, Curious George, and a couple of versions of the Flushed Away tie-in game. Oh boy, we're in for a good time. So sit back, relax, and enjoy as we dive into the wonderfully weird release that is Despicable Me the game. So right off the bat, you know this is going to be fantastic. I mean, just look at those PS2 rendered minions. Seriously, what's Gru been doing to you?
You can also be despicable to your minions. They might complain, but they'll always come back for more.
I'm sorry, what? So this game is a 2D puzzle platformer. It kind of gives Pikmin vibes without insulting Pikmin too much. You have a variety of different weapons to help you traverse the levels, including an air gun, a freeze gun, so on and so forth. And to assist you in reaching each objective, you can place the minions in a variety of ways, such as using them as bridges, freezing them and using them as a glorified battering ram. There's a lot of stuff they can do. So what are the controls like? Well, you've got 3 different kinds of gameplay in Despicable Me, so let's just break them down into 3 different sections. The first gameplay segment you will come across is just your standard platforming, so you move Gru around with the left analog stick, you can jump with X, and if you tap X again you get a double jump using his air gun. You can also move the left analog stick up and down for Gru to aim whichever gun you have out, up or down. It's not the easiest thing to aim with, but it works fine enough. As you progress through the game, you'll unlock other variants for this gun, so you'll have the air gun, the freeze gun, so on and so forth. Moving platforms will be too fast for you to stand on, or will be too hot, so you have to freeze them, and then you have a limited time to move on to the next platform, or there'll be sections with magnets where you have to use a magnet gun to pull the platform you're on along. In all fairness, throughout the game there's a decent variety of platforming options and challenges. In each level, you'll also come across a little area that has whoever's hideout you've broken into's personal belongings, and there will also be security guards. So what you can do to get your despicable rating up is vandalize them, and all you have to do is walk up to them and press triangle and watch Gru do his masterwork. It was at this point where I realised why the game had a 12 rating as well, because you could shoot the guards with whichever gun you wanted, you could electrocute them, freeze them, inflate them, whatever floats your despicable boat. Now on top of the platform sections in most of these levels, you've also got puzzle sections. Now these are fine, there's nothing particularly wrong with them, they can be a bit long-winded, but let's talk about the controls for them. So you press the right bumper button and then you can spawn in minions in a variety of formations, including just a single minion, in a line, in a circle, and then once you've spawned them, you can freeze them to make them heavier, or you can walk on them using the freeze gun, you can blow them up into the air using the inflator, they can channel electrical currents by using the magnet. There's a lot of different options here. Obviously the puzzles can typically only be solved in one way, but there's a lot of different variations of puzzles for you to get your hands on. Now the third gameplay option, and by far my least favourite, are the flying sections. Yes, there are flying shooter sections in this game where you have to follow the minions along and keep them safe, and it's incredibly frustrating. The camera is quite glitchy, there are a lot of turrets and different enemies to take down, and your gun really isn't that powerful. Controls wise, you just use the left analog stick to fly around. You can obviously invert the controls if you want to, triangle boosts you around, and if you need to dodge something you can do a barrel roll with the right bumper. You don't get to one of these flying sections for about an hour in or so, so the game kind of lulls you into a false sense of security of thinking, oh, this might actually be okay, and then you get to this section and it really starts to unravel. Now, if you've made it this far into the video, comment banana down below, and if you haven't done so already, subscribe and tap that bell for notifications. Now, after playing through this game, it really got me thinking, who was this actually made for? For a kids licensed movie tie-in video game, I have to say, this is surprisingly difficult. There are some quite hard platforming challenges that you'll come up against throughout the game. Some of the puzzles, although I'll admit I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed, were actually quite challenging. And on top of the frustrating flying sections that are already bogged down by poor controls, they were quite difficult too. So if I was a kid at the age of, I don't know, 5 or 6 who would have been enjoying Despicable Me, I would not have enjoyed this game because I would have just got frustrated with it and walked away. Or, you know, launched my controller at the TV like Wii Sports Bowling. So, if it can get too frustrating for kids, who is actually playing this game? I'm not seeing many adults rushing out to buy Despicable Me the game for PS2 in 2010. In fact, the only people I can imagine that still own this game probably are collectors? I don't know, man, this is a weird one. I've covered a lot of licensed tie-in games on this channel, and 99% of them are definitely kid-oriented, but this one just feels very strange. It's certainly not the broken mess I was expecting it to be, but it's definitely odd. Anyway, the game's levels primarily take place in places you would have seen in the film. So you have Gru's lair, you have the bank, and you have Vector's lair, and there's a variety of levels that take place in and above them. At the end of each level, you steal another part for your ship so you can go and steal the moon, and that's the entire game. The level designs themselves are fine, nothing particularly wrong with them. There are definitely a few sections that are designed with unfairness in mind rather than actual difficulty, but if you can overlook those small frustrating segments, it's actually a decent challenge. So let's dive more into the design side of Despicable Me the game. So in terms of visuals, obviously this is not the nicest looking game. The minions all look like they're suffering from extreme trauma, Gru himself looks kind of terrifying, and the backgrounds just look okay. The thing to bear in mind is that 3 of the 4 versions of Despicable Me are all exactly the same. So they made this game with minimal cost in mind, because this runs exactly the same on the Wii, PS2 and PSP, which is a massive win for the PSP, not so much of a win for the other two. So I guess it makes sense why it looks the way it does to get it working on those consoles. Now the visuals may not be the nicest, but how is the music in this game? So the main menu and credits both have the Pharrell Despicable Me theme song, but the actual in-game levels have an original soundtrack, and honestly, they wouldn't sound out of place in the Despicable Me film, and that's probably the biggest compliment that I can give it. It's not the most memorable pieces of music of all time, but for what you're doing, it makes sense. Now, on top of Despicable Me themed music, you've also got Steve Carell himself returning to voice Gru, and that definitely helps sell the game a little, because at various points in the game when I kept dying, Gru would say that he took less abuse in the film. I kinda love the weird fourth wall breaking he does in this game.
This would go a lot faster without all the failing.
Unfortunately, this game completely overlooks the fact that Gru adopts 3 girls in the film, as they're not in this game at all, and unfortunately Vector is not voiced by Jason Segel, and it really shows.
Look who's back for more.
Jason Harris Katz was doing his best effort, but nothing will ever beat Jason Segel's Vector. I'm sorry. Now, I tried to look up the reason why this game just never received a PS3 and Xbox 360 port, or even a Windows one, and the only real information I could find was on the Despicable Me wiki, so I don't know how reliable this information is, but apparently PS3, Xbox 360 and Windows versions were all planned, but they were never released due to low sales for the PS3 and 360 and limited resources for Windows. The limited resources part, yeah, I understand that, but low sales for the PS3 and 360? Surely that cannot be true. By the end of 2010, the Xbox 360 had shipped over 50 million units, with the PS3 selling just under 48 million units by the end of the same year. So, how did they come to the conclusion that these consoles weren't selling very well? I mean, I appreciate the PS2 was obviously one of the biggest hits of all time, but these consoles were still selling very well. So, what was the response to Despicable Me, the game? Now, on Metacritic, there aren't enough critic reviews for the PS2 or PSP versions to give them a score, but seeing as they're all identical, the Wii's Metascore is 55 out of 100, with the user score being a 4.8 out of 10. So, not the lowest game we've ever seen on the channel, but certainly not the highest either. Bearing in mind this was a full-price £40 game, it's not particularly long, and you're basically just paying for the license of Despicable Me, which, by the way, at the time, was nowhere near as big as it is now. So, how many units would Despicable Me the game go on to sell? Now, obviously, as you could probably guess, the PS2 version was the worst selling version of the game, just purely based on how long after the PS2 era had really ended that it released. The PS2 version would sell just 100,000 copies, which, to be honest, for the year it came out on the console it's on, is still kind of impressive, but the PSP version and the Wii version both sold more. The DS variant would actually sell just under 500,000 copies, so overall across all four versions, they would sell over 1 million copies. Just. These stats are from VG Charts. And so that brings us to the end of our look at the weird PS2 variant of Despicable Me the game. Did you guys own this game? Have you played it? Let me know what you think in the comments down below. And if there's any more cursed movie tie-ins you'd like to see me cover, let me know as well. If you enjoyed this video, please press that like button, and if you haven't done so already, subscribe and tap the bell for notifications of all my future uploads. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye bye.